While Niagara Falls remains in the gray zone during this pandemic, we are now checking in with Mayor Jim Diodati to see how the falls are doing. Good morning, happy Monday. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bob.
Let's start with the border, actually, and that's in the news this morning with the testing sites and, of course, the new rules that kick in this morning. You've actually been in consultations with this regarding all border issues. First of all, with the testing sites, that was the most recent meeting, I think. Can you give us some insight on that meeting and your input?
Yeah, well, we had a call with all the border mayors in Ontario along with Minister Blair, and we were talking about the eventual opening of the border and how that's going to look and the timing around it. So right now it's more about travelers coming back and also a means for Americans to access their property in Ontario and Ontarians to access their property in the U.S. You know, right now along Lake Erie, 43% of the properties are owned by Americans in the greater Buffalo area. So a lot of them are concerned there's been damage to their properties over the past winter, some of the storms that they've had. So they're coming up with a means, and that's what we've said all along, just come up with a way that they can safely do it. And whatever testing that involves, they'll do it. They just want to know what it is. So this will be a gradual reopening of the border. Of course, we have 4 crossings here in Niagara, and they wanted to come up with a way other than the airport means that they could cross in a safe way where they're not going to be bringing the virus with them.
Can you give any idea? I know it's not set now, but what's your thoughts on timeline? How do you think this will roll out as far as reopening?
I think they're going to make an announcement for Niagara this Friday that we're going to go into red next week. And of course, that's going to slowly loosen things up. In addition, though, Dr. Hergy, our acting medical officer of health, is going to have a Section 22 executive order that'll put a couple of limitations. So for restaurants, they'll only be allowed 10, which I think is silly because some restaurants can only handle 10, others can handle several hundred. To have only 10 rather than a percentage is silly, but the only thing he's going to add in is if anybody is there, you have to at one table have no more than 4, and they'll all have to be from the same family. And he's going to keep that for a little while longer, just until we get more vaccines out.
Yeah, so that kicks in today, right?
Well, we're hoping that,
Like even before the red, yeah.
Yes, it does kick in, but the restaurants aren't open until next week. And we'll hear about that on Friday, and hopefully a week from now, we'll be talking about the restaurants opening up limited.
Yeah. Back to the borders, as far as reopening the border, how do you think that's going to play out?
Well, that's a great question. You know, Dr. Hergy was telling us that once we hit 20 to 30% of our population that's been vaccinated, we're going to be able to control the spikes. And the only concern right now, the only variable is the variant, because although it's not more deadly, it spreads more easily. And so they're just keeping an eye on that. They're looking at modeling. I know York Region went to red today, and Dr. Hergy in York Region believes that we've got a handle on it through contact tracing. Of course, with the border, we want to make extra sure because there's a lot of people that cross. So I'm guessing also Dr. Hergy here in Niagara is telling us that once we get around 70 to 80%, we're going to have that herd immunity where we're going to be in a really good place. So the good news is we've just about got all of our long-term and retirement homes vaccinated, as well as our frontline workers, and they're going to work their way down. So in about 12 weeks, we're going to have everybody 65 and over vaccinated here in Niagara. That's going to put us into a much better place, a lot less chance of anything bad happening after that.
Yeah. Now, region hopping, of course, you're a tourist destination. How big of a problem is that?
Well, you know, and that's the big one. You know, how do you control anybody coming to Niagara? Now, everything's closed. Niagara Falls is essentially closed. Of course, the hotels are open because they've been deemed an essential service by the province. Oftentimes, they'll house frontline workers to help them, you know, staying away from their families. But people are still coming. By and large, this was a busy weekend because it was sunny, but most of the people stayed in their cars. Some people get out and walk, but there's no real way of controlling that aside from shutting down the highways. So it's the million-dollar question we don't have an answer to. The main thing here is as long as we're following the provincial protocol, our numbers are great, Niagara. Yesterday, we only had 19 new cases, and they continue to go down dramatically.
Yeah. So, yeah, the numbers are going the right way. What's the mood in Niagara Falls right now?
You know, a little bit of frustration that we're still in gray. Everyone expected that we were going to go into red. A little bit of frustration, actually a lot of frustration, a lot of surprise. But at least there's some excitement and anticipation around next week that we can start to get a little bit back to normal. I know just people are so fatigued and frustrated and anxious and angry, and it's obvious by what people are doing on social media and whatnot. They just need an outlet. So a lot of kids playing pond hockey, a lot of people doing outdoor activities, which is great. Pretty soon you'll be able to go and grab a beverage, have a bite to eat, maybe see a movie. So luckily, we're excited that things are starting to look up for everybody.
Yeah, and we hope that's the case when we talk next.
Yes.
Next week. Yeah. Niagara Falls Mayor Jim Diodati, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.